It was a cold winter evening in New York City, and the streets buzzed with the usual chaos of rush hour. The faint glow of streetlights reflected off the wet pavement as people hurried along, wrapped tightly in their coats to shield themselves from the biting wind. Among the crowd, one figure moved unhurriedly, his tall frame and composed demeanor setting him apart. Barron Trump, the youngest member of one of America's most high-profile families, was on his way back from a private event. Barron's life, despite its glitz and glamour, often felt isolated. He had grown accustomed to the constant scrutiny and the bodyguards who shadowed his every step. Yet, on this particular evening, something unusual was about to break through the barriers of his carefully curated world. As Barron's car turned down a quieter street, the usual hum of the city faded into the background. The black SUV's headlights illuminated a figure huddled on the sidewalk, a woman in her late 20s, visibly distressed. Her car, an older model sedan, was parked awkwardly on the curb with its hazard lights blinking. She was pacing nervously, clutching her phone as if willing it to come to life. Barron noticed her immediately. He tapped the partition, separating him from his driver. "Stop the car," he instructed. The driver hesitated, unused to such requests, but complied. As the vehicle came to a halt, Barron stepped out, pulling his coat tighter against the chill. The woman looked up, startled by the sudden presence of someone stepping out of such a high-end vehicle. Her face was a mix of relief and embarrassment. I'm sorry," she stammered. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble. My car broke down and my phone died. I've been trying to flag someone down for the past hour." Barron offered a small smile. "No need to apologize. Looks like you've had a rough evening." He glanced at the car and then back at her. "Do you have anyone coming to help?" She shook her head. "No. My family's out of town, and I couldn't reach any of my friends before my phone died. I was hoping someone might stop and let me use theirs." Barron pulled out his own phone and handed it to her. "Here, use mine." The woman's eyes widened in surprise. "Thank you," she said softly, her hands trembling slightly as she took the device. "I'll be quick, I promise." As she made the call, Barron turned his attention to her car. It was an old model, clearly well-loved but showing its age. The hood was slightly ajar, suggesting she had already tried to diagnose the problem herself. A moment later, she handed the phone back, her expression a mix of gratitude and frustration. "No luck?" Barron guessed. She sighed. "No. My friend's out of town, too. I think I'm stuck here until I can figure something out." Barron thought for a moment. "Let me take a look. Maybe it's something simple." The woman hesitated. "You don't have to do that. I'm sure you have better things to do." Barron shrugged. "It's not every day I get to play mechanic. Besides, it's too cold to leave you stranded out here." He walked over to the car and lifted the hood, peering inside. His knowledge of engines was limited, but he had picked up a thing or two from his security team over the years. After a few moments of inspection, he turned back to her. "It looks like the battery's dead," he said. "Do you have jumper cables?" She shook her head. "No, I didn't think to keep any in the car." Barron pulled out his phone again and made a quick call. Within minutes, one of his security vehicles arrived, equipped with a portable jump starter. The woman watched in astonishment as Barron's team efficiently got her car running again. "There you go," Barron said, stepping back as the engine roared to life. "That should get you home." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to thank you. I was starting to think no one would stop to help." Barron smiled gently. "Sometimes, all it takes is one person to change the course of an evening. I'm just glad I could help." As she climbed into her car, she paused and turned back to him. "I never got your name." "It's Barron," he said simply. Her eyes widened slightly, recognition dawning on her face. But instead of the usual reaction, shock, awe, or curiosity, she simply smiled. "Thank you, Barron. You're a good man." Barron watched as she drove off, her taillights disappearing into the night. As he climbed back into his own car, he felt an unexpected warmth in his chest. For all the wealth and privilege that surrounded him, it was moments like these that reminded him of the power of simple human kindness. Little did Barron know, this small act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would touch lives far beyond the quiet street where it had all begun. The night after his unexpected encounter, Barron Trump found himself unable to shake the memory of the stranded woman. It wasn't just her situation that stuck with him. It was a profound gratitude in her eyes, the way her voice trembled as she thanked him. For someone accustomed to living in a world where gestures were often calculated, that genuine moment of human connection felt refreshingly real. Meanwhile, across the city, the woman, her name was Emily Carter, was also replaying the evening in her mind. She had been skeptical of strangers for as long as she could remember, and yet Barron's kindness had shattered her preconceived notions. To her, he wasn't just the son of a famous family. He was someone who had stepped out of his world to help her when she needed it most. The next morning, Emily decided to share her story online. Sitting at her small kitchen table, she wrote a heartfelt post on her social media account. "Last night, I experienced something truly unexpected. My car broke down in the middle of New York City. My phone was dead, my friends were unreachable, and I was stranded. Just when I thought no one would stop to help, someone did. His name was Barron. Yes, that Barron Trump. But to me, he wasn't a celebrity son. He was simply a kind soul who took the time to make sure I was safe. In a world that often feels so disconnected, his act of kindness reminded me of the good that still exists." Emily had no idea that her post would go viral. Within hours, thousands of likes, comments, and shares poured in. People from all over the world chimed in, sharing their own stories of unexpected kindness, or simply expressing admiration for Barron's gesture. Back at the Trump residence, Barron's usual morning routine was interrupted by a buzzing phone. His notifications were filled with links to Emily's post. At first, he was confused, unsure of why people were making such a big deal out of what felt like a simple, natural thing to do. But as he scrolled through the comments, he began to understand the ripple effect his small action had created. One comment read, "This is the kind of story we need to hear more of. Barron, thank you for being a role model for kindness." Another said, "It's amazing how a single act can restore faith in humanity." Despite the overwhelming positivity, Barron couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable with the attention. To him, the focus shouldn't have been on who he was, but rather on the importance of stepping up when someone needed help. Meanwhile, Emily's story began to take on a life of its own. News outlets picked it up, framing it as a refreshing tale of compassion in an often cynical world. By the end of the day, it had reached major platforms, and Emily was fielding calls from reporters eager to hear her first-hand account. Initially hesitant to speak on camera, Emily eventually agreed to an interview with a local news station. Sitting in a modest studio, she recounted the night's events with the same honesty she had shared online. "What struck me most," she told the interviewer, "was how genuine Barron was. He didn't treat me like someone beneath him or act like he was doing me a favor. He just saw a person in need and did what he could to help. That kind of humanity is rare, and it's something I'll never forget." The segment aired that evening, further amplifying the story's reach. Within days, Barron's name became synonymous with kindness, and social media was flooded with hashtags like #KindnessMatters and #BeLikeBarron. Despite his reservations about the attention, Barron couldn't deny the positive energy the story had generated. One evening, as he sat in his room reading through messages from strangers who had been inspired by the story, he came across one that stood out. "My name is Sarah. I run a small nonprofit that helps people stranded on the road. We provide free assistance to those who can't afford it, but we've been struggling to keep up with demand. Your story reminded me why I started this work in the first place. Thank you for inspiring me to keep going." Barron felt a tug at his heart. He decided to reach out to Sarah, curious to learn more about her work. The next day, They spoke over the phone, and Sarah shared her journey, how she had started the nonprofit after experiencing her own breakdown years ago, and how it had grown into a lifeline for countless people. But, she admitted, we're hanging on by a thread. Funding is tight, and we're constantly struggling to find volunteers. Barron listened intently, her words sparking an idea. What if I helped? He offered. Not just financially, but by bringing more awareness to what you're doing. Sarah was stunned. That would mean the world to us, she said, her voice breaking with emotion. In the weeks that followed, Barron threw himself into supporting Sarah's nonprofit. He worked with his team to organize a fundraiser, leveraging his family's network to bring in donations. The event, held at a sleek Manhattan venue, was a resounding success, raising more than enough money to keep the nonprofit running for years to come. But Barron didn't stop there. He partnered with local businesses to provide free jumper cables, roadside kits, and emergency supplies to those in need. He also used his platform to encourage others to volunteer their time, emphasizing that even the smallest actions could make a big difference. The impact was immediate. Sarah's nonprofit saw a surge in support, and countless lives were touched by the expanded efforts. Stories began to emerge of people who had been helped by the organization. A single mother stranded late at night, a senior citizen stuck on a rural highway, a college student running out of gas on the way to an exam. Each story carried the same underlying message. Kindness mattered. For Barron, the experience was transformative. What had started as a single moment of compassion on a quiet street had grown into something far greater than he could have imagined. He had not only helped a stranded woman, but had also inspired a movement that reached far beyond himself. One evening, as he stood on a balcony overlooking the city lights, Barron thought back to Emily's words, "You're a good man." He had never sought recognition, but the experience had taught him something invaluable. That true fulfillment came not from wealth or status, but from making a genuine difference in the lives of others. The ripple of kindness he had set in motion continued to spread, touching hearts and changing lives. And as Barron looked out at the city below, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Barron Trump had never imagined that a simple act of kindness could spark something so profound. What began as a quiet gesture on a cold winter night had snowballed into a movement of compassion, inspiring thousands across the nation and beyond. As the weeks passed, the momentum only grew, and Barron found himself at the center of a phenomenon he hadn't sought, but felt compelled to nurture. It was early morning when Barron received an email from Emily Carter. She had kept in touch since the night he helped her, and her message was filled with excitement. "Barron, you won't believe this. People have been reaching out to me nonstop, sharing how your story encouraged them to help others. One woman told me she started a community carpool for seniors who struggle to get to their medical appointments. It's incredible how far your kindness has traveled." Reading her words, Barron felt a renewed sense of purpose. He decided it was time to expand his involvement. While he had helped Sarah's nonprofit achieve stability, he wanted to do more, something that could reach people on an even larger scale. With his family's influence and resources, the possibilities were endless. The first step was creating a new initiative, aptly named Kindness in Motion. The organization's mission was simple but powerful: to provide immediate assistance to those in need, whether it be on the road, in their homes, or in their communities. Barron worked closely with a dedicated team of advisors, including Sarah and Emily, to outline the program's goals. "This isn't just about roadside assistance," Barron explained during their first meeting. "It's about creating a network of people who care enough to act, no matter the circumstances. We want to make kindness a habit, not a rarity." The team launched Kindness in Motion with a nationwide campaign. Billboards, social media ads, and TV spots featured stories of everyday heroes stepping up to help strangers. One particularly moving commercial showed a reenactment of Barron helping Emily, interwoven with real-life clips of others inspired to do the same. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured in. Volunteers signed up in droves, and stories of kindness began flooding the organization's website. One story came from a small town in Texas, where a group of high school students started offering free car repairs for elderly residents. Another came from a truck driver who stopped to help a stranded family, saying he had seen the campaign and couldn't ignore their plight. As kindness in motion grew, so did Barron's role as a leader. He attended events, gave speeches, and even participated in hands-on volunteer work. Despite his reserved nature, he found joy in connecting with people who shared his vision. One memorable event took place in Chicago, where Kindness in Motion partnered with a local shelter to provide free meals and transportation for homeless individuals. Barron spent the day serving food, his sleeves rolled up as he chatted with guests. Many were surprised to see someone of his stature engaging so personally, but for Barron, it felt natural. "You don't need to have millions of dollars to make a difference," he told a reporter covering the event. "Sometimes, all it takes is showing up and caring." Not everyone, however, was supportive. Critics questioned Barron's motives, accusing him of using philanthropy to improve his family's public image. Headlines like "kindness" or "PR stunt" began circulating, casting doubt on the authenticity of his efforts. Barron remained unfazed. "People will believe what they want," he told Emily during one of their regular calls. "As long as we're helping people, that's what matters." Emily admired his resolve. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, Barron. Don't let the negativity dim the light you're spreading." Amid the highs and lows, one story stood out to Barron, a letter from a young girl named Lily. She had seen the Kindness in Motion commercial and convinced her parents to help her start a kindness club at her elementary school. The club organized everything from food drives to park cleanups, and Lily's heartfelt words brought tears to Barron's eyes. "Dear Mr. Barron Trump, my name is Lily, and I'm 10 years old. I saw what you did for that lady whose car broke down, and it made me think about how I can help people too. My friends and I started a kindness club at school. We've already helped clean up the park and collect food for people who need it. Thank you for showing me that even kids like us can make a difference." Barron decided to meet Lily and her club in person. On a crisp Saturday morning, he arrived at her school, greeted by a group of eager children holding handmade signs that read, "Kindness Matters," and "Thank you, Barron." The day was filled with activities, from planting trees to distributing care packages to families in need. Watching Lily and her friends work tirelessly, Barron felt an overwhelming sense of hope. These kids weren't just inspired. They were inspiring others, proving that kindness truly was contagious. As Kindness in Motion continued to flourish, Barron's own life transformed in ways he hadn't anticipated. He developed a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing he was part of something larger than himself. The movement had become a beacon of hope, uniting people from all walks of life in a shared commitment to compassion. One evening, as Barron stood on a balcony overlooking the city, he reflected on how far things had come since that fateful night he stopped to help Emily. The ripple of kindness had turned into a wave, touching lives he would never know and creating a legacy he hadn't planned but deeply cherished. Looking out at the glowing city below, Barron knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning.